The Aftershock.
So every week on Thursdays, we bring you the Aftershock, the biggest story that's rocking the crypto world. And there is no story bigger this week than the current ongoing turmoil in the market. Okay, what do I mean? Well, I said at the top of the show, $200 billion just eviscerated from the market. My question for you today, before we get into whether or not it's time to buy the dip on this current downward spiral, is who do we have to blame, right? And there are three narratives that have currently formed that I think you can kind of attribute some of the blame to. But the one thing has really risen to the top that is true to me, Chris, and that's that China has nothing to do with it this time, right? There is no news out of China that would specifically be a FUD story to knock the market on its ass. But let's work through three of these cases and you can tell me what you think. The very first piece, of course, came out that Fed chairman and local bridge troll Jerome Powell reaffirmed that he is going to be sticking true to hiking interest rates in the upcoming year three times, as he said last year. Why would this matter? Well, pretty simple. It doesn't. This doesn't matter at all. It's literally this man coming out from under his bridge to say, I really mean it, guys. That's it. But people are overreacting to this on Wall Street because that's how Wall Street typically responds to any announcement from the Fed. And because that's pulling down the overall market, it is going to have some amount of impact on crypto. Chris, is there anything that we're missing here? And to what degree do we actually need to blame Jerome Powell?
It's not on him. The irony behind this is that the stock market actually liked when he came out the first time and said they're going to be doing rate hikes this year. So them freaking out right now is honestly beyond me. I mean, he said it. He was clearly going to do it. He's not the kind of person, at least that I can see, that's going to come out and say something if he's not going to do it.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's anything here. And yeah, realistically, things like that won't affect crypto for the most part unless it's crypto related and it's outright crypto related, which they would come out and say.
Yeah. So look, Jerome Powell, back under the bridge with you. Let's move on to the next story. The energy crisis in Kazakhstan. So, for those that don't know, the home of Borat actually did have some pretty significant news go on in the last couple of days. And that was specifically that their government hiked the rates on not just regular gasoline, but all fuel and energy sources. This led to them having their entire government resign, and the entire country kind of fell into chaos, as you can see by this government building burning to the ground. This was a legitimate on the ground picture in Kazakhstan across the last 2 days.
I
Not
think
made up,
I
very real.
think that picture is like the equivalent of their parliament. Like I think that's one of their
Yeah.
primary
Yes.
government offices.
Yeah. So absolutely devastating for the nation of Kazakhstan. I'm not trying to make light of this tragedy at all. I like to just have a little bit of fun with you guys here because that's who I am. But why did this originally creep up? Well, the reason that we need to bring this to your attention is because energy across the world is still tied to the Bitcoin narrative of Bitcoin is bad for the environment. You have to be aware of the fact that this is constantly going to be thrown in front of your face. Why does it matter this time? Well, when China kicked all of the Bitcoin miners out of China earlier last year, most of them went to Kazakhstan. So all of those miners are now actually pulling from the energy grid there and actually are causing some impact. But that's because most of those miners that left China were not mining in any type of green or renewable way. That is the problem. You look around the world at many of these other nations that are mining Bitcoin, most of them are using green practices. So China is continuing to have a negative rap on the Bitcoin energy and environmental, narrative. But Chris, with what you've understood about this, does this actually have something to blame regarding the downward turn in the market?
Again, it really shouldn't because the reality of it is if anything, right? This is the way I would think about it, right? It would make more sense for the price of Bitcoin to actually go up if you have an energy crisis in, a predominant Bitcoin mining country because it means the creation of new coins will be slower. Therefore, that should increase, in theory, the value of the coins currently in circulation. So that's
Okay.
why I don't really think there's a connection there, but I could be wrong.
So here's the reason why I think it actually does have something to do with why the overall market cap within crypto fell. As soon as they toppled the government and all of the government resigned, with the exception of the president, second that the country went into disarray, the military actually shut off the internet. So the internet in that country is completely off at this stage of the game. They're using like only satellite means to get out. And when they did that, all of the hash power that is currently located in Kazakhstan fell off. So you're talking about a
Interesting.
12% retracement in the hash rate. That is substantial. So
Yeah.
I'm not saying that it's the only cause, but it's important to understand that hash rate does play a big factor here. So let's move on to the final piece of what could be at play here. Of course, everybody on the planet, and we cannot say the name of the actual virus, but let's call it Omicron because that's what Richard calls it. Um, the markets are reacting to the fact that there could be more lockdowns coming, right? That's terrifying to a lot of people. To others that have common sense, they realize this is not as um, fatal, or like it doesn't have as high of a mortality rate than all the other variants that are out there right now, but it is still highly infectious, right? Still should be taking it seriously, still should be, staying safe. But I think the markets are actually compensating for this for a bit, right? They reacted when we went into first stage lockdowns, like big time, right? We saw a true black swan dive in the middle part of the first half of 2020. And you can see that in the Bitcoin chart. It just falls off a cliff. I think that we're seeing part of that take place right now. And I'm not saying it's going to be to that degree. I think that we've currently found support, but we could still have a little bit of a ways to go before we're actually out of the woods on this one once people can settle themselves down. Chris, do you think that narrative is at play?
Again, I just don't know, and that's the reality. Because the way I would think of it, it shouldn't affect it. But at the end of the day, even if a few people all think that, it really doesn't matter. What matters at the end of the day is what the majority of the people in the space feel, because that's really going to sway and change the market as a whole. And I could see, honestly, a lot, maybe not a majority, but a sizable enough amount of the community and the industry, right? The investors, I could see them freaking out about this because, and we know this from looking at the demographics of not only investors but developers, business members, etc., that typically it's a younger crowd in crypto, and a lot of the investors are retail traders or wannabe day traders, so they are going to freak out whenever there is news of any kind. Unless they're degenerate, then they'll just tweet out buy the dip.
Yep. And so, by the way, speaking of which, that should put a bow on like the reality here is that you can point the finger at whoever you want, but there's no sense being an alarmist. This is not the market falling off of a cliff. This is not the end of the bull. We are still here. We're going to continue to educate on crypto and help you understand this market better. And there is no way better than help you understand, is it in fact time to buy this dip? And in our opinion here, we collectively believe that yes, it is absolutely time to buy the dip. So we're going to take you through 6 different categories and we're going to work through which projects stand out right now that you should potentially have on your shopping list as you're looking to buy the dip right now. Now you can see on the left, if you're joining us on YouTube, we have this joke shopping list up. There is some seriousness to it, but don't put a ton of merit in it. We're going to go through and we're going to break this down a little bit, especially because you can't buy world peace, as we've continued to prove in society. So let's talk about the first one, Chris. The first category that we wanted to dip into is smart contract platforms. And these are the top smart contract platforms according to CoinGecko. So please understand that we're tracking their top platforms based on overall market cap contribution right now. That currently is headed by Ethereum, followed by Binance Coin, Solana, Cardano, Polkadot, Terra Luna, Avalanche, Polygon, Chainlink, which is not a smart contract platform, Algorand, Near Protocol, and Phantom. Chris, Off of what you're seeing here right now, is there any that really do stand out as they took a massive hit? Maybe they're currently at the bottom of their trend channel, and they're also stacking up good fundamentals, meaning they may be a good buy for the rest of this year. What do you see?
I mean, first and foremost is Chainlink, but the interesting thing about Chainlink compared to the rest of these is its price actually has not really changed at all in the last 6 months. It's been hovering around $25 the whole time. I personally think that's undervalued. So even though it hasn't necessarily dipped, I feel like it should be worth more at this point in time. That being said, Cardano has only hit, let's see, 6%, 7% dip in the last week, but it's actually less than half of what it was at its peak a few months ago. So if you love Cardano, this is a sign and a great time to get in and buy the dip. One thing I do want to point out, though, is I also don't think this dip is stopping here. I think it's going to keep dipping. That being said, because we are already in a dip, these are still great times to buy all of these coins. That being said, don't freak out when you buy them and then it dips more. Just know that the dip will probably continue from here.
What I'll add to that is when you look at buying the dip, you should be considering what Chris is saying. Okay. I would split up the exact amount of money that you have to invest right now into three separate tranches. Go 30%, 30%, 30%. And right now, put in 30% to whichever projects you decide are your buy the dip candidates. Then, if it does dip lower, you have the opportunity to add another 30% into that investment so that you're dollar cost averaging down. Finally, you have another 30%, set a target, invest there. If it doesn't make it there and then we bounce, great. Reinvest at the point where you actually entered. Very valuable strategy for investing in crypto and anything else in the world. But to me, Chris, there are two or three on here that immediately catch my attention. Number one, a sub $100 Avalanche is extremely valuable to me. I personally believe that Avalanche is going to be a top 5 coin by the end of this cycle. That is a really, really bullish stance. I understand that. A lot of people would say that. But I think that based on what we're seeing between the cross up of what we talked about at the top of the show, with the number of developers that are flocking to Avalanche, crossed up with the actual work that's being done behind the scenes, that is a really powerful fundamental value. The fact that they've pulled back under $100 shows to me that they're going to be tapping the bottom of their trend line and likely going back up soon. Another one that operates in tandem with Avalanche sometimes, but has not yet really had its moment, is Phantom. Now, I'm no expert on Phantom. I just really like their protocol. I think that they have really stellar fundamentals behind the scene. They're doing things a little bit differently than other smart contract platforms. But I will go to say that this list is not comprehensive. CoinGecko does a really bad job of compiling these categories. For example, you see Polkadot at number 9. Why in the world is Cosmos not listed on here? Right? Like that seems like such a neglectful, like you need to have that project on here. Okay. It is a smart contract platform. It is an interoperability play. And to me, if I can get into Cosmos at a $23 entry point right now, I'm pulling the trigger on that all day long.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
It's been on an absolute tear and it's only going to get higher. Okay. A lot of these platforms have a lot to go from here. And again, I stand by the fact that Chainlink doesn't belong on this list. Chainlink is an oracle.
Oh, yeah.
They they
Absolutely not.
they feed data. But if we're talking about the overall category, which we on this channel at Cryptocurrent, we believe that smart contract platforms are going to continue to be one of the core narratives this cycle. It's important to remember them. I also really like Polygon Matic at that price. Granted, Polygon had a really, really massive issue across the last 2 weeks when a big game deployed on their network and it completely took it down. That being said, because that's what we love saying on this channel, apparently, Chris, I've noticed that we've said that being said
That
about
being said,
500 times. We're going to put that on the shirt for sure. Polygon is a layer 2 solution on the Ethereum network that specifically deploys on ZK rollups. That is a scaling solution that is the most effective, the most efficient, and will continue to be the precedent setter in the space. Down 7.9% from the last week is just the tip of the iceberg. Okay. this project is going very far. There's another one that's not on this list that I would absolutely be looking at. That's Immutable X, the scaling system and smart contract platform that's been developed specifically for NFTs and crypto gaming. We both believe that NFTs and crypto gaming are going to be a narrative throughout this year. It's going to be inescapable. Some of it's going to be bullshit. Some of it's going to be real. But Immutable X is going to be the platform that a lot of this stuff is built on. I'd be looking at that if you're willing to, take a little bit more of a risk averse look at things, because I believe its market cap is down below the top 125 now. So let's go ahead and move this thing forward, and let's look at a new category, and that's DeFi. Chris, I know that you're probably a little bit more bullish on DeFi than I am, so I want to let you take it from here and talk about what looks like a good opportunity within DeFi.
It's tough, right? Because a lot of the DeFi that I would be most interested in actually aren't even on this list. And that's because who knows, right? Like you were saying, CoinGecko does not get this right. But first and foremost, I'm looking at Sushi Swap. I mean, that's one of the biggest DeFi platforms in the world right now that works and that people are actively using. And for
Sorry,
it to be
quick clarifier for you guys here. This is not based on market value, market cap. Okay,
oh yes,
this is 100% based on total value locked in the network. Just really need to make sure that's out there because you don't want to get that twisted. Thorchain is not trading at the 18th position in terms of market cap. Just make sure you have that perspective. It's a different way of charting. So this is based on total value locked in the network. Sorry, Chris, continue with what you were saying.
Sushi, love it. It's great. And for it to be down 17% over the last 7 days is honestly kind of criminal for how often and how, just the volume that that platform deals with on a daily basis. It is used and people like using it. That is a great buy. Sushi is a great token to have. And in that same vein, Spell token is another great one to have. And that's also down 17% in the last week. And that's more just kind of what I'm looking for, right? When you see these crazy dips over a 7 day period, that's usually a pretty good sign that, you know what, I should look into this more and understand its applications, because if it's down that much, there's a chance that it will automatically rebound that much. And that's kind of my thought process when I'm looking at coins. I'm not going to ape in, I will do my own research, but a big flag for me are major dips across a 7 day period with minor dips in the short term, because that shows you that something happened, it's down big. But if it's going slowly in a more recent time frame, that's a good indicator that things have probably calmed down and maybe we'll start to see some positive growth. But who knows? This is crypto and a lot of it is a roulette wheel.
Yeah, a lot of it's speculation, guys. So, speaking of speculation, if you like hearing coin calls, we do our coin calls here every single Tuesday during our blockchain bet segment. Speaking of which, I called a coin out of the DeFi category on this week's blockchain bets. I stand by it for the month of January. I also stand by it long term. Thorchain is an absolute steal at $7.13. It is. There's no other way of looking at it. I happen to completely agree with you, Chris. I think sushi is an absolute steal right now. And frankly, it's been neglected like you wouldn't believe. It's that stepchild that you Harry Potter under the stairs. That's what we're talking about with sushi right now. Okay. There's a proposal out right now for Daniela Sesta, who you may have seen in our year end cryptocurrent live awards video that we did. We had him up for person of the year. He is currently proposed to be the person who's going to take over the vision and the strategy for Sushi Swap going forward, because the team has completely, dropped the ball. That I believe is going to go through. So getting in at a really solid entry point for Sushi may be the biggest move of this cycle if we're looking at it from an abject point of view, long term, rest of year. I also like to look at stuff like Condex Finance and Curve. These two are tied, they are related. I'm not an expert in them. From every other expert that I've talked to about it, they cannot say enough about them. Do your own research on that one for sure. Osmosis is, in my opinion, going too fast. If you're in Osmosis, please consider taking profits, because it is the official exchange of the Cosmos network. Beautiful project, beautiful network, beautiful overall vision. It scares me that it's up 53% across the last 7 days, because that looks like something that is going to end up being just like one whale pulling their liquidity and all of a sudden everybody's screwed. Um, Feign caution there. The last one that I'll speak to in DeFi that I would be looking at is outside of this list, and that's Wonderland Time. I really do genuinely believe in that program. They just today announced that their DAO has locked in its very first investment in an outside project, which is going to give anybody that holds time or wrapped time access to this ICO, basically. Very interesting stuff. They're approaching a reserve currency from a completely novel perspective, and it works together with Spell Token and Magic Internet Money and eventually Sushi. Very worth looking at. But as we carry this ball forward into our next category of non fungible tokens, I want to stress this right now. Just because the rest of the market is going down does not mean the entire market is screwed. Okay. When the rest of the market is going down, oftentimes investors get bored and they want to go play. They want to go find the next piece of money that they can, earn. And right now that's happening in NFTs. Not necessarily the coins, but in actual NFTs. A lot of money is being traded in NFTs right now. You should keep your eye on that world. Big drop coming tomorrow. Illuminati NFT is releasing and revealing tomorrow night at 6:17 p.m. Eastern time, I believe. That, in my opinion, has the potential to be one of the biggest projects of the year. Worth looking at, worth tuning in tomorrow morning, because we have the head of the Illuminati NFT project, Alex Taub, sitting down with Richard on our morning interview tomorrow. That is going to be an amazing, highly insightful segment. I really recommend that you subscribe right now so you can get notified as soon as it drops. But as I look down this list, Chris, I see a ton of projects that I would love to get an entry point in. What do you see that you think is interesting?
Well, Sandbox, obviously, out of all the metaverse plays, I think the Sandbox is by far the most developed right now. I think it's on its way. But for it to be down 11% in the last 7 days, it makes sense to me why it's down, but I also think that makes it just a better buying opportunity. I think owning Sandbox is going to be incredibly lucrative in a few years' time. But of course, that's a few years' time. So it depends on your time horizon. If you can buy a bunch now and just hold it, that will be one of the best buys you could ever make. Not financial advice, but if you do the research, you'll probably come to the same conclusion I just did. But if you're looking for something more short term, I wouldn't go Sandbox. I would look maybe more at something like an ENS, because Ethereum Name Service has been doing incredible things since it launched in like August, right, Steve?
Yeah. It launched in September, but yeah.
Yeah, and
Oh,
then
no, sorry. It launched in October. It was later in the year than that.
oh wow.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, those are the two off the top. I mean, Audius is one that we talked about on one of our live streams months ago. It's a really interesting project. Had some big news, but hasn't really done much since. So to me, it's falling in value actually kind of makes sense. But if you're interested in, kind of digital media, entertainment, all that kind of stuff, take a look at Audius, because what they're doing actually is very cool. It just hasn't really hit its stride yet.
Yeah. One of the things you need to keep in mind when you're doing your research is if a program is already, sorry, if a project already has a live product, that is a really good indicator that they're going to be here a while. Audius is attempting to basically be the decentralized Spotify. I love the platform. I have messed around with it. It is real. I would absolutely consider entering Audius at this stage of the game because it has been up as high as $3. Okay, so you're talking about a more than a 50% retracement from all-time high. You're right. ENS has been brutalized since its last run up. I think it made it back up to $90. I would be looking at that and adding more to my stack because I still hold a sizable bag of ENS. But I think per your thesis at the very beginning, saying that like you think the market has some additional moves down from here, I think the NFT tokens in particular are going to be very, very affected when that next move happens. So do not go making moves just because you have two analysts here making calls. Do your research, take the time. I personally believe that Illuvium is completely undervalued right now and like will absolutely end up being one of the biggest games in all of metaverse gaming in the next 2 years. Um, I'm so sold on Illuvium at this stage of the game that it's just not fair. I think that, yeah, the Sandbox and Decentraland are both great metaverse projects, but even Illuvium is rolling out land sales shortly. The second that that happens, they're going to start treating Illuvium as its own independent metaverse. They probably shouldn't, but they will. And to me, the second they enter the metaverse discussion, it's going to shoot them through the roof even higher. But what I see here, only one last thing really does stand true to me, and that's Engine. Engine, for those that don't know, is effectively in the analogy of when you had the gold rush, you had the people selling picks and axes and picks and wheelbarrows for the harvesting gold. They're the distributor of picks and axes in the gaming space. They have all the tools to provide game developers and decentralized gaming platforms with the tech that they need to roll out good games. I'd be looking at Engine for sure, and I would definitely look at their sister platform, Efinity, which just secured its own Polkadot parachain in the last couple weeks. As we move on, there are going to be 2 pages of metaverse here, Chris. So we have blue chips and we have degen plays. Realistically, everything in the world of metaverse right now is a degen play, right?
Yeah.
Because everything is so fresh, it's so new, and these market caps can move like multiples very quickly. I have one on this list in the blue chip outside of what we've already talked about with Illuvium and some of these others like Sandbox, Decentraland that really stick out to me.
I'll pass it off to you then, because the only one on this list I would even consider really, besides Illuvium, would be Sandbox.
Okay.
Well,
Um,
and UFO, unless that's what you were going to say.
so I like UFO. I just don't see it as a metaverse coin, so I kind of discount it.
Okay, I was thinking more general gaming, but go ahead.
So there actually, I would say technically there's two. Um, I really like Vulcan Forged at this price. They had an exploit a week and a half, 2 weeks ago that totally tanked their price. And it is just such a great, great project. They're basically a gaming studio that's developing a number of different games for the metaverse. Really, really like studio plays. I think that they're going to go a very far way. And if you want an indicator that is similar to Vulcan Forged, that operates a very similar platform, it's Gala Games. And Gala Games ran like crazy at the end of last year. Perfect example.
Were they
Uh,
the ones behind Fate and Arena?
I think that Fate and Arena was Gala Games.
Okay. Because I
Um,
remember when we were covering that on one of the streams and we were talking about Fate and Arena when they made their big announcement. It was like number one on the App Store. And I vaguely remember Gala Games being included in that conversation.
they were. The other one that I will say right now has gotten some recent play between a couple of the different influencers out there, but because of the recent drop, like it's just tanked. I love RMRK at this price. I really do. They're trying to basically provide a Lego approach to metaverse gaming, um, and providing in its own ways like picks and shovels. So I really like RMRK. But if we're looking at the real degen stuff, like outside of the top 277, there are a couple that are in here that we've talked about on the channel. Aavegotchi is one. Aavegotchi has pulled back significantly. And if you look at the trends on their chart, it's mirroring what it did back in like September. I would be astonished if it just continues to slide. There are 2 others on this list that I wanted to point out to you that you should do some research on.
Number 457.
Eternity is one of them. Number 457, you're absolutely right. I think Eternity is being disrespected. They got as high as $75 early on, like following their ICO. They have some really incredible stuff coming. Like fundamentally speaking, based on what they actually have developed and what they're rolling out and what they're selling, they are an absolute mammoth in this space that deserves a lot more respect than 457.
Yeah. See, I would say, if anything, Eternity in theory pre ICO and just after its ICO was less attractive since its launch, when it has announced all these major partnerships working with top celebrities to release their NFTs. It is shocking to me that after all of that, Eternity has tanked so much
Did
because
you did you see who they just released?
no. Oh,
Bruce Lee.
that's crazy. I definitely did not see that.
It's really freaking cool.
I know
Yeah,
I
so
know they partnered with another major soccer player recently, because I saw something about it.
it was Luis Suarez.
Okay, that would be it.
Yep. So a lot to be considered there. Again, guys, like on the dip, you want to be looking at these. I would definitely be considering the fact that it may dip further. Red Fox Labs, another great play. Aurori, I've heard a ton of people talking about Aurori. I like that's one of the projects that I need to do a lot more research into. But Red Fox Labs has a stellar team behind it. They've done a really good job in the space and developing games. I think they're like a smaller version of Vulcan Forged. So be considering that. And the last two categories that we're going to look at, Chris, are Polkadot interoperability plays and Cosmos interoperability. I don't want to spend too much time here because, again, we have a ton that we've covered here for you guys, and we've given you guys a lot to add to your shopping list to do some research on. Um, Run down the list. Don't give rationale. Just point some stuff out because, again, interoperability is the future.
Ocean Protocol, because I've heard Steve talk about it before, and Kilt Protocol, because they're doing something really interesting with privacy tokens, and they also were on the podcast. So go check them out, because a lot of people actually commented on that video saying how interesting it was and how much they loved it. That's unusual on YouTube. Usually it's just bots.
Yeah. When you look at the market caps, if you're really looking for multiplier plays, continue to watch Bitcoin and the larger market cap coins fall down. And if you can scoop up a couple of these projects that are sub like $150 million in market cap, they're typically the plays that have the highest multiple. And for me, Affinity is the insanely undervalued one on this list. Affinity is going to be the NFT ecosystem of the multiverse and the metaverse and the multi metaverse going into the future. I really like Affinity, especially at that price point, because it's getting crushed right now. I will be adding more Affinity to my bag because I do hold it. Full disclosure. Moon River, phenomenal project. They've not yet rolled out the Polkadot equivalent of it. Moon River is operating on the Kusama ecosystem. You heard Ocean Protocol earlier on Cryptocurrents interviews from early in 2021, where Richard sat down with Bruce Pond. Phenomenal interview. Recommend going back and listening to that. They're doing really cool stuff as well. Chris, you personally need to go look at Energy Web Token.
Okay.
From what I understand about what you like to invest in, EWT is worth your attention. They apparently have some connections to much bigger financial institutions and
Nice.
are trying to basically revolutionize the way that our energy grids work. Pretty interesting stuff. But in Cosmos in particular, because again, I don't mean to speed through this, guys, but this is a ton that we've given you tonight. And we're also coming up on our hour, which we typically like to make sure we're cut off by an hour. On the Cosmos interoperability list, seriously do your diligence on this. Cosmos is going to be a massive player, and they've been underappreciated so far, but they've been developing a ton in the background with their inner blockchain. Um, what is it called? It's the IBC protocol. I can't remember what the C is. Anyway, they're doing a ton on the chain. I would definitely recommend looking at Osmosis, which we've talked about already. Thorchain, we've talked about. Again, back to blockchain bets on Tuesday. Richard called Kadena, another Cosmos project. I really like what Secret Protocol is doing. They're doing a lot within the NFT space and creating a lot of really interesting, marketing compelling material within the decentralized space there. Last but not least, I really love Akash. I think Akash is doing some stuff with decentralized computing that nobody else is doing. Very worth looking at. Do you have any on this list that have your attention?
Yeah, not really, but I do want to just point out one great thing about Cosmos is, if you want to go buy it through Coinbase, because literally just holding it on Coinbase gives you a 5% APY in Cosmos. They will pay you out directly in Cosmos. So that is absolutely Like Steve was saying, Cosmos is going to be here to stay. It's doing a lot of really cool things. There's a lot of great applications for it, but it's also a good financial play based on just how it's performed in the last year. So if you have kind of a watch or, kind of a watch and wait mentality, buy some Cosmos and just hold it. It doesn't
Yeah.
hurt you. You get paid out, and end of the day, maybe it goes down, but you'll still actually won't be as hurt if you had bought it somewhere else and done nothing with it.
Yeah. Again, I would be looking for a $23 entry point on Cosmos. I think it's going to absolutely retrace to there because it's been on an absolute tear lately, but it will bounce off 23. Pretty confident of that. The one thing I will say, and goes off of what Chris just said with staking, and I know we're running long to those of you that are, joining us for the entire show. This one's for you. If you like really, really significant alpha, this is one of the most underappreciated parts about Cosmos. They have what's called the Cosmos Hub. The way Cosmos Hub works is you go stake your Cosmos that you purchased at Coinbase in your Cosmos wallet in the Cosmos Hub to support and secure the network. You're going to continue to be airdropped tokens that are launched off the Cosmos Hub over time. So you're not just going to get the staked value and APY that you would in just typical return of Cosmos. You're going to get these airdrops as well. And some of these platforms are going to go on to be massive, massive influences within Cosmos's overall ecosystem. Worth keeping in mind. I absolutely believe in Cosmos going forward. I love their vision. I also think they're probably going to do something to overhaul their tokenomics in the next 6 to 8 months based on what I hear from some other people that I can't actually talk about because they asked me to keep them anonymous. That's me reminding myself to not mess up on the middle of the stream. Anyway, that is going to wrap up the shopping list, right? There are a ton of different projects out there, guys, that are just absolutely hammered right now based on what's going on in the market with all this turmoil. Do not get shaken out by the corporate and by the institutional hands. They will continue to try to shake you out by creating turbulence in the market. It's not worth paying attention to that degree. Be looking at all of the things that we just talked about, consider some entry points, do some research, and you will be on your way to making some more money in crypto.